Hi, this is John O'Brien with California Credence at californiacredence.com. Well, it's November and it's time to buy a bunch of stuff because everything's on sale. The plugins and everything really gets your juices going. And I wanted to go over this thing called gear acquisition syndrome because I've personally experienced it. And since my job is I'm a licensed therapist in California, and that's what that camera is behind me there. I do online therapy with individuals struggling with various mental disorders. We diagnose and treat different mental disorders. But then I was looking at this G.A.S, gear acquisition syndrome, and it's actually pretty distressing. I've had personal experience with it. So I was going to go over what I believe to be some informal symptomology, how it affects a person's life, and how it can be worked with or work around or maybe put at bay. So let's get started. So in talking about disorders, whenever there's a disorder, what differentiates a disorder from any other kind of problem is that, like for example, somebody can have mental problems, like depression, anxiety, but it becomes a disorder when it starts interfering with a person's ability to function at work, home, or school. So for example, if I have depression and it makes me not go to work, that would be a disorder. If I have depression but I still go to work and do family stuff, yeah, I'm struggling with something, but there really isn't any functional impairment that we know of. There could be, or mild impairment. But gear acquisition syndrome actually does cause some impairments to functioning. For example, if someone is ruminating on gear, that impairs their ability to function in the family or with somebody in a relationship because their mind is constantly, and I've experienced this, constantly thinking about the gear. Either I'm going about buying it or about waiting for it to be shipped, or if I have it, about messing with it. And also the money aspect of it. Money spent on gear that I don't need. So in other words, I don't use the gear that I have, but I feel the need to purchase some more gear. And that throws me into some financial turmoil. That 0% interest over X amount of months, is pretty attractive and we can justify that. But the real thing is when it comes down to it, that might impair us financially. And also work-wise, sometimes we might spend resources at work and taking risks at work, looking up or investigating gear and things like that, might have trouble focusing at work or school, putting off school stuff in favor of obsessing on some piece of gear. Those are impairments. So I wanted to go over kind of for my own opinion about how gear acquisition syndrome works. So initially I become aware of an item. So maybe I browse the web. If you're anything like me, I'm constantly browsing the web for things to look at or going and looking at things on YouTube, and I become aware of an item. And so once I'm aware of the item, I start researching the item. And as I'm researching the item, I'm looking at videos, maybe even download the manual, maybe looking at prices and everything related to the item. And then I start justifying why it's a good idea to buy this thing. It will actually consolidate my functioning here, make my workflow a lot easier, and I start to justify the item. Once I've justified the item, then I tell myself, yeah, I need this. And then I start to ruminate on the item, imagining how great it would be to have this item. So now that I've become aware of the item and I've made the decision that I need it, then I start to really ruminate on it, and I'm starting to experience thought interruptions, distractibility. My attention is affected, and it's difficult for me to focus on conversations. Like if I'm going out to coffee or going out to eat or talking to somebody at work, I don't entirely hear what they're saying because I'm ruminating on getting this gear. Now, when I'm talking about things like this, the gear acquisition syndrome part of this would say, oh, come on, John, that's ridiculous. You're making a big deal out of nothing. And everything is fine. I have it under control. Does that sound familiar? It does to me. Anyway, so yeah, making a big deal out of something that's affecting your life, absolutely, I would do that. So once I've dedicated a great amount of time to thought, research, and looking at the deals, trying to find the best deal on something, I actually make the purchase. And so that purchase can actually throw things into, could cause an impairment to my financial functioning. But the problem with that is that the pain is not delivered for about a month or so. before you start realizing that, wow, maybe this wasn't really in the budget. Or it can be justified by like, well, it's no interest for 48 months. So I can literally blow up my credit card with all this stuff, because after all, it's not costing me interest and it'll be paid off in 48 months. Remember, whenever you charge something, you're presuming on your ability to make money in the future, and that's a pretty heavy presumption. Now, in the case of any kind of other addiction type thing, things become more addictive based on their cycle. So for example, tobacco or cigarettes can become very addictive because the high lasts a very short period of time and the person has to cycle over the use quite a bit. And for example, if you look at cocaine or something like that, the person gets a high for only a moment and then they have to cycle back over and over again to get the high. Well, software can be kind of on that level. And software can be something that can be purchased in small quantities multiple times over, and I get it immediately. So that kind of reinforcement cycle can really cause a person, like if you're anything like me, you have thousands of plugins, and now I've whittled it down to just Omnisphere, Keyscape, and Trillion are really the only softwares, and then B3X by IK Multimedia. Other than that, I really don't use a lot of other plugins. But software can really go off on a real rapid cycle of spending money that maybe I don't have, or getting a bunch of stuff that I don't need that's eventually going to take up my time. So let's say it's not software, it's something hardware. Now the item is preparing for shipment and it's en route. This once again, as it did when I was ruminating on getting the item, shopping for the item, and then I finally purchased the item, now that it's been ordered, it's preparing for shipment and it is en route. And we all know what happens when something's en route. We check often, all the time, and it can be all consuming for attention, where it's distractible. I'm looking constantly for this item to be arriving. It's not an excitement anticipation really that I'm experiencing when something is en route. It's actually a denied reinforcement, and it's a distress that I actually feel until I actually get the item, because waiting for the item is not exciting, it's distressing. So then comes the moment of reward when the item arrives on my porch, it says it's delivered, and I actually get the item. This is a very heavy reinforcement. I get the thing, I get to open the box, I get to pull the thing out, and I start setting it up. It's a very exciting feeling. You just can't wait to turn that thing on and start messing with it. So now there's another burden that's going on, and that is, now that I have the new gear, it's now incumbent on me to spend a bunch of time messing with it. So that's going to impair me socially, or socializing with other people. And so now I used to obsess on ordering it, thinking about it, getting it, delivering it, or being shipped. And now my obsession is, when I'm not messing with it, I'm thinking about messing with it. And so now this is not only the burden of having the gear, but also learning the gear, experiencing the gear, tweaking the gear, messing with the gear. And my mind is consumed with this new item. So then I start obsessing on making time for the use of this thing. I watch YouTubes on it, look up things about it. So if the thinking about and the ordering the item wasn't all consuming, now that the item is in my possession, it's very much all consuming. So that could have an impact on my finances. It can have an impact on my ability to work. It can have an impact on my ability to socialize, or even if I'm in school, it might impact my studying, because I'll let school go in order to go ahead and mess with this item. Okay, now I've had this item for a while, and satiation is something that sets in. That means I've gotten used to it, I've played with it, it's been there, I'm in it at a place where it's like normal now to have this item. I'm no longer enthralled by it, it becomes common. And so what ends up happening is once I'm satiated on that item, I still have the debt, I still have the lost time on all that other stuff, but guess what? Now I want another piece of gear, and the cycle starts all over. Possibly even before I'm satiated on that gear, I'm still looking for more. And then I start going through this cycle all over again. The other side of that is when I'm experiencing problems, like, say, for example, social problems, interpersonal problems, work problems, school problems, there's something that can actually help regulate my mood related to that. And that would be looking for more gear, buying more gear, messing with more gear, which would then decrease my ability to function again. So there are different levels, I would say, in my mind. This is just, again, my theory or my hypothesis. And you can have mild, where, yeah, okay, that kind of applies, but I don't have really a lot of impairments to it. Moderate, where a person can be like, yeah, it's created some problems. In fact, I have a whole secret life where I have stuff delivered to another location, which I've done, in order to conceal my buying too much. Or it could be severe, where it's like I'm financially ruined. I have a room full of gear. I don't even hardly use any of it, and I'm just completely financially ruined. And my relationships are non-existent. I fancy myself to be a musician, but what I'm just finding out is I'm just a gear hoarder. So it could be real severe. So then comes the idea about, well, then, okay, then what do I do about it? What are some things I can do? So one of the best things that you can do is, if you're in a relationship with someone, is to go ahead and tell them that, hey, you know what, I buy stuff a lot before I even actually need it, and so letting somebody know that you do buy stuff, especially somebody who's close to you, so that when you go to order something, or if you're going to do something, they might say, hey, whoa, didn't you say you're like really obsessed with buying a bunch of new stuff and it's kind of causing some pain in your life? So that's one of the things you can do. And one of the best things, I think, to combat gear acquisition syndrome, in my opinion, would be to actually mess with your gear, actually spend time with it. A lot of times people order new gear before they even have given a full use of the gear that they have. For example, I have a Montage 7, which I love this item, and it's got some things about it that I don't like, and I'm sure everybody who has a Montage can list those. They're very common. So then there's the Montage M7, and which for me would be a total with tax would be about 4,300, maybe something like that. But then my G.A.S. mind would say, yeah, but you can fray the cost if you sell the Montage that you have. And then you can have this new Montage, which has got all this polyphony, and it's got a better interface on it, and it's got a better this and a better that. And it's like, okay, so first of all, the audio interface that's on my current Montage, the classic Montage, works great. I figured out how to overcome the display that's hard to see. I have a shield that I've created for it. And quite frankly, the audio interface that's in the Montage Classic is the exact same one that's in the new Montage M7. It's a stellar Steinberg awesome piece of gear. So the main thing is just basically use the gear that you have. Dive in, dive deep, use more of it than you would think. Don't try to get a new piece of gear until you've really expended the use of the gear that you have. So one of the main things about gear acquisition is, oh, this will help my workflow run smoother. Oh, this will help me to do things better. One of the things to also do is a cognitive reframe, where you can go and you can tell yourself, this may make my workflow a little bit smoother, but the price that I'm going to pay is going to make the workflow improvement completely be negated. My life will actually get more complicated and suffer more of a hit. If you are somebody that really, it's like, I have to buy something. For me, one of the things that the Montage M7 had that I really, really liked was the shimmer reverb. I love shimmer reverbs because I'm a granular synth kind of guy. I like that kind of a sound. So what I did is I integrate, I use maybe 50% of my sounds come from the montage, and the other 50% come from my two-in-one laptop, because I use software synths in combination. So I went ahead and spent 50 bucks on the Valhalla Shimmer Reverb, and it blows away the one that's in the M7. So you can run that straight through your Montage Classic, and I believe the setup time of setting up the laptop probably is a maximum of 5 minutes extra on stage setup. So maybe 10 minutes max. And the polyphony inside my laptop, no limitation whatsoever. And the sounds are great. I don't need an ANX1 because Omnisphere that I have has a way better synth engine in it and a way better analog engine in it, digital recreation, of course. It even has the different classic analog synths that are built into it. So again, that's something that, why would I buy something when I already have these other things? So basically on this thing, I know I probably went on long, but the thing about it is if you are just buying stuff and it's kind of fun and you are rich enough and you are retired, you have time, you have money, it's not an interference to your life, go for it. Hoard the keyboard and all that stuff. Use it, buy new stuff before you're even done using it. Great. And that's great. But if you're somebody who's kind of like still working, you have a family, you have a social life, you have other things that are going on that are busy in your schedule, this gear acquisition syndrome can be kind of a very big disruptive thing. I have to just tell you real quick that when I made the decision to sidestep the Montage M7 purchase, I was actually got a sense of freedom to work with the Montage that I have. Then I discovered that, hey, you know what? The benefits of this Montage that I have now are enough. And the feeling was amazing because I'm not obsessing on anything, and I actually enjoy time in my social life and my work life and my career life and everything. So I really think that the gear acquisition syndrome, especially this time of year, it can be a problem. And so this is just something I felt like doing just because my interest is mental health. So, all right, take care.